Happy Saturday and good evening, fantasy football fans, DFS lovers, and really, I guess, all kinds of fantasy sports and YouTube folks alike. If you're tuning in, this is the Slate, brought to you by GridironRatings.com. I am your host, founder of Gridiron Ratings, Jeff DiMatteo, and with me tonight, as usual, is our lead analyst for DFS, Kyle Carroll. Kyle, how are you?
Doing well. We're back to Sunday Eve again. A lot of weird situations happened week one, right? That we didn't predict. Some things we did predict. So I'm excited to get back out there and see what we can get together.
Sure. No, that sounds great. And now that we actually have a little bit of data, it's 1 week's worth, right? We can start to really make some decisions and really start to see what's going on in the landscape. After 3 or 4 weeks, we start to have a really firm bead on what's going on in the world of fantasy, right? We start to get a sense of how to really stack our lineups. But speaking of stacks, one of our stacks this week got a little beat up. Michael Pittman not going to play this week. He's got himself, I guess, a quad injury.
Yeah, he practiced earlier in the week, and then it was like, oh, he's going to miss practice, and then it's like he's going to miss the game. You're like, oh crap! Like, so he's out this week. You hope that it's just a 1-game situation. I think Alec Pierce is still in the concussion protocol. I don't think he's going to play Sunday. So now you're looking at a completely depleted wide receiver room there. Paris Campbell's going to have to step up. Naeem Hines is probably going to get some more action, and then I'm going to butcher the other guy's name. I can't remember it. Derlin or whatever his name was.
Ashton Dulin. That's actually the guy out of the 3 that I'm going to play, I think.
Ashton Dulin. There you go. That's going to be, because a lot of people are going to like pivot to Paris Campbell just because he's the most recognizable name. And he really didn't do. Yeah, and he really didn't do much. He kind of got bailed out at the end of the game. But yeah, outside of that, I think most people besides Dak Prescott escaped injury for week 1.
Yeah, so it was a pretty quiet week 1. We had a few guys pop up. Alvin Kamara's nicked up. DeAndre Swift is nicked up. So keep an eye on your injury reports for those. Mm-hmm. We're obviously going to be operating on the latest news as we have it. But let's go ahead and shoot right into some stacks here. So, Kyle, you put updated stack information on gridironratings.com on the DFS page, usually every about Wednesday or so. So I'm going to go ahead and add in a little image here. This takes us right to the site. And, first stack of the week here was the San Francisco 49ers. You got a 3-man stack with Lance, Kittle, Ayuk. They're playing the Sea Chickens here, or Seahawks, sorry, 49er fan coming out in me. How do you feel about the 49ers? Let's talk about it.
Yeah, it's going to be another watch the weather situation. I remember last week we talked about, like, I'm not really worried about it unless there's, like I think I said like a monsoon or a typhoon, or I butchered something one way or the other. And it turned out to be exactly that. So, I pivoted, you pivoted. It was just kind of a situation where you didn't want anything. Even Debo kind of got bailed out by a touchdown in the first quarter, and then he did nothing. You look at the stacks that I have. Again, my favorite that we have here is Trey Lance, because I think you're going to have a little bit of Jeff Wilson. You're going to have a little bit of, these other guys kind of, Debo's going to have a lot of carries in this game. But the weather's going to be bad. Kittle's probably, he might play, he might not play. You're not very sure. And then for the Seahawks, again, if you watch that game, and as a Broncos fan, it was very aggravating. But the first half, Geno looked great. Like, I'll give props to Geno. That second half, that late third, total fourth quarter, they really couldn't move the ball at all. And Rashad Penny had a couple of long runs that got turned over because of flags. But if all you have to do is, play the run, and the 49ers have a really good run defense. I don't, outside of, that big DeAndre Swift game that he had last week, I don't know how you're going to play really anyone from this game.
Gotcha. Well, I'll tell you, if I'm looking at that game, I'm a 49ers fan, right? So I'm a little skittish on the Niners right now in terms of DFS play. But if you're going to stack them up because you're looking to be different, Lance and Debo is obviously a pretty can't-miss deal. You've got Rashad Penny as the run-it back there. I kind of feel like I want to go out there and take like a receiver or give me a little bit of DK. I just don't know how the 49ers are going to cover DK Metcalf. I'm struggling with that. I watched that defense against the Bears last week, and they consistently had Talanoa Hufanga, the strong safety, in the box. He and Fred Warner were actually bracketing Dre Greenlaw. So even when they were in their sub packages, they had Hufanga in there as the additional DB. He was always there. but they effectively always looked like a 4-3, even when they had nickel personnel on the field. So really interesting look for what they were doing. So I kind of wonder, like, in their cover 3 scheme, how are they going to, really manage a guy like DK who can basically beat you at the catch point and pretty much dominate any of these guys that the 49ers can trot out there? Because none of these guys are Patrick Surtain.
Yeah, well, the reason I ran it with Rashad Penny only because of the weather situation.
Fair.
Like, I don't think it's going to be as bad as Chicago, but again, like, I don't have that much faith in Geno Smith because, again, he started off hot, kind of teetered off towards the end, going to have a lot of rain, and DK Metcalf isn't totally like reliable in catching the pass every now and then.
Sure,
he makes some bad mistakes as some receivers do, but yeah, I'm kind of fading away from this team.
Okay, I can dig it. Well, let's hit the next one then. Let's go ahead and keep moving on. So, oh man, this one should be white hot, right? So you've got the Bengals. You also have their opponent as at Bengals. So I know the Bengals aren't playing themselves; they're actually playing the Dallas Cowboys here.
Whoops.
Typos happen. Sorry, folks. Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, Tyler Boyd. Pretty hard to skip out on those guys. We know there's going to be a lot of points scored on the Bengals side. Take me through it.
Yeah, this again is kind of based off of T. Higgins not playing. He seems to be practicing a little bit. I don't think he's been completely cleared for the week. He's coming off his concussion issues. Sometimes those can linger a little bit. And personally, if I was the Bengals, if he was having a close call, I wouldn't even play him. I think they're going to win. Last I checked, they were -7, pulling up their spread here. Yeah, they're still -7 on the road. I don't think you can expect last week to continue to be, the norm. The one thing we did learn, if you want to take away one thing from last week, is no matter what, if it's a stud defense, you just play them and let them figure it out. You want to talk about the Bills? They shut down the Rams. The Steelers shut down the Bengals. The Super Bowl teams from last year got slaughtered week 1 because of really good defenses. So if there's anything to take away from that for DFS week 1, there's going to be some lower priced. Even the Steelers again this week without TJ Watt. They're like 2,800. I'm putting them in a lot of lineups. Same for the Bengals. They're 2,200. The prices came out kind of early before the Dak Prescott injury, and so they weren't able to be corrected, which is probably why Joe Burrow right here is only 6,600. They came out kind of earlier than normal. Usually you have to wait till Tuesday, Wednesday, and by Monday night they were out for week 2.
Sure.
So I do like this. I do prefer I pivoted a little bit. I've had a busy day. I'll try to get this updated. I'm preferring just going Joe Mixon on my one-off for this game. They could not stop Leonard Fournette last week. Joe Mixon had a ton of touches. I think he had 27 touches last week, and he looked great. Like, this is the Joe Mixon you've been wanting to see for since his rookie year, when you're like, oh, this is going to be the guy. It's taken a few years. The offensive line definitely let down Joe Burrow last week, but as far as the run game, they look good. They used him in a lot of his work came in first and second down. So the fact that he's still getting receptions in first and second down work is really encouraging, because for some reason P. Ryan's going to be there on third down. So I like Joe Mixon a lot this week for a one-off. I'm stacking him in some lineups, and we're going to come to some other stacks later on in some other big games where you're able to slide in Joe Mixon into these lineups.
Cool. Well, I know last week we hit pretty hard on that Dolphins defense, and that worked out. I'm really leveraging the Bengals this week because, let's be honest, I'm not confident Cooper Rush is going to come out here and light up the scoreboard, and I'm expecting some turnovers, and that's going to help you on defense. The Bengals D probably going to get a little chalky. I think everyone's going to be targeting that. Yep. But with that, we'll get into some other defenses I like a little later on, including the Dolphins again. But let's go ahead and let's hit another one. Let's shoot past the Bengals here. How about the Denver Broncos, man? Hey, that's a cushy matchup against the Texans. 27.5 implied total here for Russ and company after that embarrassment in Seattle.
Yep. And as just a Broncos fan in general, I need something because, man, that was the most frustrating game. And I'm not going to go on a soapbox because we're here to talk about DFS.
Sure.
But to kind of recover from last week, they started off slow, but towards the end, the late third, the whole fourth quarter, they looked good. And I think if you look at what I have here, I have another solo here for the running back position. And this is one of my biggest stacks of the week is Joe Mixon, Javonte Williams, because I think both teams have an opportunity to see a big enough workload that the talent will just win out. We saw what it's Jonathan Taylor, but he was not stopped whatsoever against the Texans last week. They were able to keep up. They were able to do some things again against the pass, but Jonathan Taylor pretty much did whatever he wanted last week. And I expect Javonte, who had 12 targets, 11 receptions, in week one, they were playing from behind a lot, but that is just what you want to see. He is getting all the passing work. If you watch this game, it is almost identical to what they do in Green Bay with Aaron Jones. I can't even count how many running back screens in the first half. Like, that is the game plan. They're sending the receivers deep and they're dumping it off to the running back position. And thankfully, it's Javonte Williams, who at this point in their careers is the most talented between him and Melvin Gordon.
Cool. No, I can dig it. I mean, the Texans played pretty tough against Indianapolis for, the bulk of that game last week, but this Broncos offense is far more loaded. You have to worry about Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy. I mean, Russ at this point in his career is probably better than Matt Ryan at the point in his career. Obviously Javonte and Jonathan Taylor, they're, both really good running backs. But Denver, I think, is better equipped defensively to go ahead and take care of Davis Mills. So this game could get out of control. I love the Javonte play there. It'll be interesting to see how you can stack him with another premium back like Joe Mixon and then still figure out tight end. Because that's usually what I try to do is I try to go ahead and tie up. If I've got one of those two premium backs, like say I went Saquon and Javonte, typically I want a tight end in one of those games because there's some correlation between tight end productivity and running back productivity. But the Denver tight ends are not anybody I want to be involved with, and neither are the Giants. So it becomes interesting to see how that build works out. Let's hit the next one, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tampa Bay. We got Julio in a stack. I know he's a little dinged up, but it's not the end of the world. He should play. We've got no Chris Godwin, or as I like to call him, God Chriswin. And the Saints have been the bane of Tom Brady's career for the better part of the last several years, especially during his time here in Tampa. But, you got Lattimore covering Mike Evans. That hasn't been good the last few years. So explain yourself. Give me some Mike Evans love here.
Yeah, and that's why I've gone with the mini stack. What I saw from Julio week one, and the reports came out for camp, Julio did not practice, Mike Evans did not practice, Chris Godwin, Russell Gage, and none of them practiced. And then the next day they were all back on the field, and that included Leonard Fournette. So it was like, okay, I think you're just getting the veteran rest days. Julio Jones, he just catches the ball aggressively. He's just earlier in his career, he's kind of able to bounce back a little bit. He made that one big catch in that game against Dallas, and he kind of
got up holding his ribs a little bit.
Yeah, and it's like, man, don't be doing that anymore. I think he's 33 or something. It's like, come on, it's fine. I
saw that and I said, geez, it's week one. Here we go. Julio's already done.
But I understand that Tom Brady in the last 2 years is 0-4 against the Saints, and it's going to be a tough matchup. But they're in a dome. They're going to, I think, Tom Brady's going to have something to prove, right? Because he's done it all in Tampa Bay. The last 2 years, he's been, one of the Super Bowl favorites. He won a Super Bowl. The only thing he hasn't done is beaten the Saints, and they have made it known that he has not beaten them. So again, Marshawn Lattimore covering up against Mike Evans. That's why I like Tom Brady and Julio. And I was very impressed with Michael Thomas. I was one of those guys that I'm out, I'm not touching him. I'll let somebody else draft him. And then he goes and gets 2 touchdowns. And you're like, was it fluky? And you go back and watch it and you're like, no, it's not fluky. He looked good. Winston should be healthy. So I think, this is one of my favorite stacks when we're talking about the 2 running backs. If you're able to find cheaper tight end, and we've talked about doing the Bengals defense, which is pretty cheaply priced, getting Tom Brady, Julio Jones, and Michael Thomas along with those 2 running backs in your lineup is very reasonable.
Gotcha. So with the Saints, someone who's not on here is Alvin Kamara. What's the latest on Kamara? Is he playing this week? Is he hurt? Is he practicing? What's the scoop there?
Yeah, he's hurt, and they brought up Latavius Murray from the practice squad. I forgot his name because he hasn't been relevant for a few years, but he was on the team last year.
He was a waiver pickup for the Ravens last year. What are you talking about?
Or
week 13 or week 14.
Yeah. So he got picked up brought up from the practice squad. And so I think they're just being precautious. I really don't know if he's going to play. It was kind of weird that he really didn't do much this past week. And you're playing against a really good Tampa Bay defense that I know it was in the game plan to not use Zeke, but they still shut down the running game. And even though Zeke had a pretty good yards per carry, he had a few big runs, I don't think he was going to be able to sustain that the whole game. So as far as Alvin Kamara, I'm just kind of out. I need to see Jameis Winston use him in the passing game. And if you look at his pricing, in the running back pricing this week, it's Jonathan Taylor at $9,900, Christian McCaffrey at $8,900, and then it drops 1,500 down to Alvin Kamara at 7,400. But then there's a lot of good ones like Joe Mixon at 7,200, Javonte at 65, even some other guys we're going to be talking about pretty soon.
I like Saquon Barkley's in that set. Was he 75, 7,600? He's somewhere in that ballpark.
Like he's less. Yeah. And so I'm going to take the healthy guy. Just pulling up, seeing what his report is here. It was on DraftKings. It just says ribs list is questionable Sunday. Mark Ingram took all the first team ribs. I think I'm just going to kind of avoid that.
Sure.
And yeah, that's kind of where I'm standing on that.
Got it. So Jarvis Landry, he had double-digit targets last week. I think that's a guy I really like here when you're pairing him up. I think the Michael Thomas, Jarvis Landry run it back on the mini stack is probably interchangeable. My thought is I like Julio, I like Brady together, especially if Evans has got Lattimore. I kind of like Julio to see some volume. And then, if I'm running it with Landry, my thought is, hey, the Bucs know how to get after the quarterback. Or you know what I mean? So it's like Winston's going to have to throw it quick. And if there's anything wrong with Kamara, Jarvis Landry is working the middle of the field again. He looked a lot like his Miami days with those double-digit catches, work in the middle of the field. He's kind of all over the place. I loved it. Give me more of that Jarvis Landry action because he's one of the most talented receivers over the middle of the field. And he doesn't get nearly enough love for that. So
yeah, let's go ahead. He's looked really good. Go ahead.
Cool. Yeah, let's go ahead and hit the next one. I know we're running low on time, so try to keep them moving here. This is going to be an interesting one. I want to talk about this one quite a bit. Arizona Cardinals at the Las Vegas Raiders. I'm looking at these stacks. This Cardinals offense was just this side of putrid last weekend. They looked awful, and their defense wasn't any better. So, for lack of a better term here, explain yourself.
No, I agree with everything you just said. But you have to be a little I guess I wanted to say a little encouraged, but I'd be lying to myself.
Go ahead. Give me the excuses, Kyle. Just give it all to me.
At least in the third quarter, they kind of started putting it together a little bit. And I think they just fell behind way too early. The game plan got thrown out the window. This defense, it's one of Vegas' highest over-unders at 51.5. And, looking at it, the fact that Vegas is actually favored by 5.5, I think bodes really well for this Kyler Murray stack. I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity here in this game. I like the Zach Ertz coming back off the injury. He got a little bit of garbage time touchdown last week, but I think that was good enough for you to see that, he was working his way back from injury. This week, I think he's a full go. I think Hollywood Brown, they're going to give him those 10-plus targets this week. They have to. And so I like this stack with Kyler Murray, Zach Ertz, and Devontae Adams because what I saw from Devontae Adams is just it's the same as what I saw for
41% target share. It's unsustainable completely, but this Cardinals defense is bad and the secondary is really bad. So, I'm going to go ahead and I'll take that 3-man stack. If you're telling me that the Cardinals are going to put it together, I'll take Kyler Murray. I'll take Zach Ertz. I'm going to swap out Marquise Hollywood Brown though for Greg Dortch. And then I'm going to go ahead and flip Hunter Renfrow for Devontae Adams. I'm about to sneeze, so excuse me.
All good. Yeah, I have a lot of Greg Dortch. Instead of pivoting to Paris Campbell this week, and I'll have a few Paris Campbells in some of my bigger contest lineups just to have that variation. But yeah, Greg Dortch, who I think saw like 7 or 8 targets last week, he is going to be involved, and he played more snaps than AJ Green, so he's the 2.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, we actually have a bunch of questions popping in. I missed the comments here. Before we hit some of these questions, I got to say that the Greg Dortch thing, I didn't even think of that guy until I spoke to my guy, Jordan Vanek, over at 33rd Team. And we got to talking, and he's like, well, what about Greg Dortch? And I was like, what about Greg Dortch? Who cares, And, but he kind of filled me in. I was like, well, dang, at that price, I think I'm willing to take a flyer because I think the Raiders are going to make this a one-sided game. But if I'm taking a receiver, the Raiders are going to try and take away Marquise Brown. If Greg Dortch is running around underneath or running around anywhere in man-to-man or in even some kind of sticky zone, I think I'd rather have the number 2 option there. But anyway, another guy to look at is Darren Waller. Nick Vigil and Isaiah Simmons covering tight ends last week were a combined 8 for 8 for 120-something yards and I think 2 touchdowns against Travis Kelce. Darren Waller's going to eat. Yeah. So something to be aware of there. Anyway,
we'll get to that one when we get to the Raiders.
Yeah, we'll hit that one in just a minute. Yeah. So, hey, Andy, let's see. We've got Andy Rosales. I hope I didn't pronounce that too incorrectly. Would y'all trade Jerry Jeudy for Darrell Henderson and A-Rob? I like Henderson and I like A-Rob.
Yeah,
You know,
I think it's for the running back. If you're like weak at the running back position, like let's say you have someone like Zeke, right, where maybe you took him, late second, third round because he was kind of rising towards the August drafts. I would rather be starting Darrell Henderson over Zeke. So if you're like, I really need to get this running back position filled up on my roster, A-Rob should have a good bounce back. I like Jerry Jeudy. I think him and Sutton are just going to eat too much into their production. And I've always been Sutton over Jeudy personally. So for me, I think I would take this trade.
I think we need one more week on A-Rob. AJ Terrell's probably catching some A-Rob while they try to double off on Cooper Kupp and try to assign more assets to that side of the field. So it might be one more week on A-Rob. I think I like the trade. I think I'm willing to punt on Jeudy here, even though he had the big play. If it wasn't for a broken coverage, he doesn't make that huge touchdown catch. And without that play, he's trash last week. So, Andy, we're taking that trade. Take Henderson, take A-Rob, sleep like a baby. We've got another one here from How They Do That. Yo, how they do that? Best QB wide receiver stack this week. Who do you like? Who's your best QB wide receiver stack? Even if we didn't get to him yet, who do you like best?
Yeah, I think based on the pricing, I do like Derek Carr and Devontae Adams or Darren Waller. I know it said wide receiver, but I think having that tight end stack is just as in this matchup because Derek Carr priced at 6,200, which we're about to come up to in this really good game. I think the Cardinals should be able to keep up enough. That's Derek Carr is my guy this week.
Sure. And the Raiders don't seem like the kind of team that wants to take their foot off the pedal anyway. They
Nope.
get up, they're just going to keep the pedal down and keep it going. So I think I like that too. Here we go. We've got this is my man. I don't want to give away his real first name, but Fantasy FB Addicts, he likes Wilson and Sutton himself. Hey, that's not a bad stack either. Gotta love that. Gotta be pretty thrilled to get Russell Wilson and Cortland Sutton against the Texans because that team, they're getting better, but they're not there yet. And so Denver has something to prove after this Seattle debacle. I really think that's gonna turn into a mess, I think, and it's gonna be Denver just stomping out Houston. So guys, thanks for the comments. Keep them coming. We'll kind of hit them periodically as we see them here. Let's go ahead and hit the next stack in line here. I'm just kind of clicking the button, seeing what pops up. We got Washington is the next one on the popper here. This is actually kind of a surprise for me to see the Washington Commanders pop into one of our stacks of the week. Take me through the Samuel Gibson Wentz. Like, how'd you get here?
Yeah. So again, it's another one of those top 5 over-unders of the week. Those are some of the games that we want to target because it's going to be a lot of points. And I think at the beginning of the year, Carson Wentz, showed enough, right? Like we're like, man, that was weird. But you're going to have some of these games where you don't expect these quarterbacks that we've kind of written off to have good games. Curtis Samuel, I had to put him up here just for myself because, I've been like one of his biggest fans since he's been in the league and riding that roller coaster. It was just happy to see him come out with 11 targets and 4 rushing attempts in week 1.
Are you really standing on your 3-man stack right now? Or is that what you're doing?
I am.
You're getting full truther value?
This is based on this is based on if DeAndre Swift is a full go, of course, because he also kind of had it. He popped up on the injury report this week, but he finished the game fine. I think this is more just soreness.
Sure.
But Antonio Gibson was used a ton in the slot last week. Like that is where most of his work came in the passing game. He had a great game. I think he finished with 20 points or somewhere around there in DraftKings. Curtis Samuel was up there as well. And they're still reasonably priced. I think if Antonio Gibson has one more week, like I expect him to this week against the Lions, I think we're going to see him kind of get bumped up to that like Joe Mixon range of like 6,800, 7,000, because he's just going to be way too valuable in the passing game, especially with Brian Robinson not being there.
Cool. I can dig it. Obviously Brian Robinson, hopefully his recovery is full and we see all of that very soon. Obviously he had the incident with the carjacking and he took a couple of bullets. Like we hope he makes a full recovery here. Something that was left out on the Commanders here. Jahan Dotson looked excellent last week. The guy goes out, scores twice?
Yep, 2 touchdowns.
Yes, 2 touchdowns on my bench in every league I have him in, so that was pretty exciting. Gotta love Jahan Dotson. I'm looking at this Lions team. I don't know, man. This is a defense that allowed how many points to the Eagles? 38 points to the Eagles?
38, something like that, yeah.
And I'm saying, okay, so maybe they dedicate some coverage to Terry McLaurin, and that allows Jahan Dotson to move around a little bit underneath. Like, how do you feel about Dotson? I don't even know what his pricing is, but what's your take on that kid for week 2?
I like Dotson. I think that we know Terry McLaurin is going to be the one, and I think we've seen enough from Curtis Samuel to know that he's going to get manufactured targets and manufactured carries. So for me personally, Dotson's priced at 4,200. I just looked it up for you, so he's a little bit cheaper, but it's hard to be like he looked great, but it's hard for me to justify. He got 2 touchdowns. How much are you going to be expecting that? And so if he goes for like 4 games and doesn't have a single touchdown or doesn't exceed 4 receptions, like I wouldn't be surprised.
Well, if you're playing in a tournament, you're kind of, it's no risk it, no biscuit, right? And at 4,200, who else can you get in your lineup? So
yeah,
Dotson seems like a nice additional play too. Before we hit the next slide, this question here from Duke Kent, he needs to know Antonio Gibson, AJ Dillon, or I'm assuming that's Darrell Henderson. I'm just going to jump out on a limb here. In the flex, who do you like?
Man, that's a good problem to have.
Yeah, right.
that is so. So you have Antonio Gibson against the Lions, AJ Dillon against the Bears, Darrell Henderson against the Falcons. Man, that is close. I think I'm leaning Gibson or Henderson over Dillon. Dillon had a really good week 1, but I'm kind of expecting Rodgers to kind of show out against the Bears a little bit. I think he's going to want to showboat and prove that he still is what he is.
That he still owns the Bears, right? That's
owns the Bears. Again, I still think Aaron Jones kind of owns that backfield a little bit. Even though, again, AJ Dillon had a really good week 1. I think I'm going Henderson.
I know who I want.
Falcons. I think that's where I'm going.
So you're going Henderson against the Falcons, and I don't think that's a bad pick because Atlanta, they played well against the Saints last week. They kept that game really competitive until the very end there. I think I like Gibson here, based on what you're saying about the hey, he's going to get some work in the slot. I'm assuming this is PPR. In a PPR setting, I think I'd rather have Gibson here because Cam Akers is going to do just enough to make Henderson miserable, I think. And A.J. Dillon, to your point, there's still Aaron Jones. And until they figure out how to throw the ball down the field, I don't know how much they're really going to run it. And they've got to, they want to run it, but if they can't threaten with the pass, the Bears can stack the box up, and those 2 safeties are no joke. Eddie Jackson, Jaquan Brisker can step up. They can fill run lanes. Nick Morrow's a capable veteran. You got Roquan Smith in there, and he's obviously one of the best around. That Bears defense, even though in the slop against San Francisco, looked a lot better than advertised. So if they can shut down the run even a little bit and force Aaron Rodgers to take him downfield with a really, really sparse receiver group, I don't know, man. I think I'm out on Dillon. There's too many questions for me.
Yeah.
Give me Gibson. At least we know he owns the backfield in the short term. Henderson's my number kind of 1A there. I'm happy to throw the dart there on Sunday morning.
Close. Yeah, it's really close.
Duke, great problem to have. I bet you've got a killer roster. Good luck this week. Let's go ahead and hit the next team here. Let's hit the little shaker. And we've got the Miami Dolphins. Dolphins are going into Baltimore. They've got the Ravens. 44.5 on the over-under. That's not usually overly impressive, but, looks like a 20.5 implied total here. We saw a little bit in the first half against New England. They started running up and down the field. In the second half, they totally petered out. Like, which Miami team are we going to see against Baltimore that seems like their whole secondary is dead?
Yeah, this is one of those teams that I think is going to be kind of avoided for a lot of people that I think you can kind of make up your difference here in some of your big tournament games because we saw last week from Jalen Waddle, specifically, one catch is all it takes. The dude is freaking fast, like Tyreek Hill fast. And so it is, when there's a lot of weapons on this field, I think the Ravens, the defense just isn't what it used to be, although they didn't really need to do much in week 1. But, against that matchup, like I'm not going to put too much stock in that.
Yeah. Well, now Peters is hurt and you've got Humphrey's hurt, and it looks like once you've lost a couple of corners, like that makes life a lot harder. And we saw that last year out of this defense too, where both those guys were out the whole year. Like, how do you cover anybody? And now you're going to tell me, well, I got to cover Jalen Waddle on one side, and I got to cover Tyreek Hill on the other side with backup corners. Your 3 and your 4, get out of here.
Yeah, I think this is going to be one of those surprise, really high scoring games because the Dolphins. I respect their defense. I think they have a really solid defense, but New England looks like they don't know what they're doing. When you have Matt Patricia calling plays and then your backup is old Giants head coach Joe Judge, like I think there's bigger problems in Miami that the Ravens looked good. They shut everything down, but against this Ravens offense, I think we're going to see a potentially high scoring game. I'm smashing the over on this game because there's just way too much talent on the offensive side of both teams.
Fair. I mean, I kind of like Lamar a little bit, but I like him for his rushing upside. Usually when I'm playing quarterbacks, I try to find those guys that have a shot at 300 yards, passing, because I want the bonus on DK. Those
Mhm.
hidden points can be all the difference. And this might be one of those stacks where I think I'm going to stack this one up and run it a few different times in the what is it the play action, the 1.5 million play action. It's like 100K to first, 20 max entry,
Yeah.
$3 entry. That's probably where I'm going to go with something like this. And I'll do a bunch of different variations of that Tua stack because, man, 5,600 for your quarterback. And if he goes out and gets 303, like, that gives you a defined advantage because now you've
Mhm.
probably got studs in 4 other spots. So that's cool. I can dig that. I like Miami this week. Let's go ahead and hit the next one. Detroit Lions is the other side of that Commanders matchup we were talking about earlier. 24 points on the implied total. We already mentioned we like Gibson. We got him on the run it back. People still hate Jared Goff. He's generally not considered very good, but we've got him here in a couple of stacks. Tell me about it. Take me down the Detroit road here.
Yeah, he kind of just does just enough. I don't think he's a bad quarterback. I think he's kind of he's like just average. Like if
Sure.
there's like the really bad, the really good, the like above average, and then there's just average. And that's just kind of where Jared Goff falls. Like he does just enough to kind of keep people in games, but he
He's the
always seems to.
Mendoza line of quarterbacks.
Yeah. So and he just does just enough to like fourth quarter, he wakes up. He's like, oh, we got to put up some fantasy points. And that's what he does every single week. And we saw a struggling, Jaguars team from the year before. They looked pretty decent and almost won this game. If ETN catches any of his touchdown throws,
Yeah, they missed a
it might
couple of
be,
them,
yeah,
couple
it
missed
might be a
opportunities
different.
there.
There's two of them, might be a different game. So you look at Jared Goff with DeAndre Swift with Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think at this point I'm pivoting, on this 3-man stack. I think it's going to be Jamal Williams on the one-off. If there's one running back I want to take from this game, I don't know how much DeAndre Swift is going to be playing this week. You need to watch those injury reports. If he ends up he's going to be kind of on a pitch count, I like Jamal Williams because he seems to be the like end zone. He's the red zone guy. If you're trying to do goal line, then I think there's going to have plenty of opportunities for that. And they're favorites in this game by 1 point, but they're favorites. So congrats to them for finally turning this thing around, but we need to see it first.
Can we just call Jamal Williams the vulture? Because that's really what he's there for. He's just there to vulture up just enough touches and just enough
Yeah,
touchdowns from DeAndre Swift to keep him from becoming elite.
but he's likable.
He is likable. That's
That's
true.
the problem.
Yeah, that's true. I guess there's not many likable vultures. Here's the thing. I'm looking at this group here, and I love that you've got Amon-Ra in these stacks because I'm an Amon-Ra truther. I love the Sun God. I'm all about it. Uh, you know, this guy obviously works in the slot. Washington showed zero propensity to cover the middle of the field last week. And so Amon should eat. And when you're talking, was that 6,500? That's a pretty slick price if you can plug that guy in a PPR setting, DK's PPR, into your lineup. I'm not saying he's going to get you 10 catches or 100 yards, but if he chips in 8 for 95 and a touchdown, he gets you close to that 100.
Mm-hmm.
You've got yourself a pretty slick player there returning good value on 6,500. So like that quite a bit. Let's go ahead and hit the next one. Let's keep it moving.
Ignore that typo.
Oh yeah, sorry. I was supposed to switch that up and get you right on that, and I screwed up. Sorry, guys. There's a typo on the.
I was tired putting these things together the other night.
Yeah, this was my fault. Kyle sent me an update on this Raiders one. The Raiders are not playing against themselves. They are in fact playing the Cardinals, as we outlined earlier. 51.5 on the over/under, 27.5 implied total here. You got Greg Dortch on the run it back on this one. Love that. I think that's really cool, especially with the Carr, Adams, Waller stack, because you're really spending up on that 3-man stack. But man, I think that's a killer stack. I love that this week. Let's go to Vegas. Let's go ahead and throw some cards down, push our chips in the middle of the table, whatever other gambling references we can put in here. Tell me about the Raiders.
Yeah, you pretty much lined it out. I think the Raiders are going to win this game. I think the Cardinals are going to want to prove that they can still keep up in the NFC West. So I think they're going to have to put in a solid game plan together. I think you're going to get James Conner more involved. So I think the Raiders are going to be forced into a situation. They did not seem I know they were kind of playing from behind against the Chargers. It was still a close game. He didn't seem very interested in running the ball at all. So, Josh Jacobs and Zamir White, they were kind of doing their thing a little bit. I think this is just going to be, he threw 3 interceptions. So he was this close he was 295 yards, 3 interceptions, 2 touchdowns. And if things just go a little bit the other way, where you turn one of those interceptions to a touchdown, I know it's about a what ifs, but 6 more yards, you hit that bonus. And Devontae Adams, I mean, 41% target share. We already talked about it. Greg Dortch, 7 or 8 targets or whatever it was at 3,500. And then Darren Waller, after we just watched Travis Kelce torch them last week. I mean, my goodness. I mean, I just built this lineup right here. Derek Carr, Devontae Adams, Greg Dortch, Darren Waller, and the Bengals defense, who's actually 2,200, not 2,800. You still have 5,975 remaining per player.
That's really good.
That I mean, man, like what more do you want? You can throw in that's the running backs of Joe Mixon and Javonte Adams that we talked about earlier, and at that point, you would still have 5,100 remaining for your wide receiver and flex spot. And there's a lot of good priced wide receivers in that range.
Dude, I love that. I don't think we need to say anything more about the Raiders outside of that. That game's probably going to be more one-sided than people realize. So give me Raiders all day on that one. We did have another question pop in before we hit the next team. The Joker. He's a big Bears fan. It looks like he's got the paw there.
Yeah,
looks like
it's nice.
Yeah, I can dig that. I wonder if that's a custom job. Who to start at running back and flex? He's got Jeff Wilson. Probably either had him or picked him up off waivers. David Montgomery, Rashad Penny, Chase Claypool. So far, he has Monty and Jeff Wilson in those slots. It's a 16-team league, so a little bigger format here. I like Jeff Wilson and I like Monty, so it's really Penny and Chase. Like, who do we like in that flex?
Yeah, in 16-man leagues, in certain situations, I tend to go more floor than ceiling, because a lot of times in these 16-man leagues, your opponent is not going to be able to put together. I mean, these flex options are great options.
So how dare you play floors, by the way?
Only in certain situations like this.
Give it to me, right in my veins.
I like Rashad Penny. That's what I'm saying. I like Rashad Penny because he's going to give you, he's probably going to get 3 or 4 receptions. It's going to be raining in that game. He's going to have to carry the ball 12 to 15 times. If he sneaks in for a touchdown, when you're playing 16-team leagues, at some point you just need points in your lineup. Sure. And I know Chase Claypool got it's only one running back and one.
One running back and full PPR. I didn't know it was one running back. That changes the game quite a bit.
Running back and Jeff Wilson, I think, has to go in your lineup, because those backups there, and you're the resident 49ers fan here, they haven't really proven much. And when Jeff Wilson plays, I think it was at least 60% of snaps, the guy ends up being a top 20 running back. I mean, so when he's the guy, he does well enough for you. So I go Jeff Wilson, and I think I still go Rashad Penny over David Montgomery. In a full PPR.
There was a lot of Khalil Herbert, so I can get behind the Rashad Penny things. I think Penny's going to be kind of it because we're still
Green Bay. It's just that situation. I just don't want to touch a bear. So
all right, I'm down with that. So I'm with the Jeff Wilson thing, but I want to really keep an eye on the George Kittle injury, if he's going to play or not. If he's playing, I absolutely love Jeff Wilson. If he's not playing, I like him less. Guard play for the 49ers last week was really suspect. I rewatched all the games because I do some additional IDP work where I'm scouting individual players on both defenses. And the 49ers really failed to block guard to guard. And we just were really bad going man to man up front. We're really bad about getting into the second level. And I think they could impede Jeff Wilson's value just a little bit. If Kittle sits for any reason, I'm willing to pivot to Montgomery Penny. But if Kittle plays, give me Wilson Penny.
Looking at his, I know you were talking, you weren't able to read it. Jamal Williams, I think you have to play him. If Jamal Williams is part of those other options there, I think I'm starting Jamal Williams over Rashad Penny, and David Montgomery and Chase Claypool at this point, because he's just way too involved. And if, like I said, DeAndre Swift is limited, or if he re-aggravates in that high over-under game against the Commanders, I think that's, they got torched against James Robinson. He looked great. I was like, Achilles who? He looked really good in week 1. So, yeah, I think personally I'm going Jamal Williams and Jeff Wilson.
Yeah, Jeff Wilson, I think, like I said, Kittle starts, it's Wilson for me. And then, that lineup's pretty strong, though. I love having Josh Allen, Debo. Sorry, Joker. I'm taking a second to read through all the names here to make sure I've got the whole lineup squared away here. God, I love Ertz in there. Yeah, really. You got Prater, then you got Kenny Gainwell, Claypool, Williams. I think I like Penny just because the Seahawks, are probably going to be able to run it up the middle a little bit.
Yeah.
But Montgomery's going to split a little bit with Herbert and PPR. It seemed like we kept seeing 24 pop up more frequently than we would like. Yeah, give me Wilson. And I think I'm going to stay on Team Penny here. I just think due to a lack of other options in the backfield, the volume's going to be there. Hey, Joker, pick 16. That's no. He says he was pick 16. Hey, you know what? 16-team league. That's a pretty damn good lineup. I will take that in a 16-team league. The only thing I might consider is keep an eye on that Bears backfield. You're a Bears fan. You're aware of it, man. If that's going to keep being a deep split, maybe you can shell off Montgomery to the guy who's got Herbert and maybe get something decent in return. So, But that's for another show. Hey, happy to help out, Joker. Let's go ahead and move on to the next team here. What do we got up next? Let's hit the shaker. And
big one.
Oh, boy, we've got the Los Angeles Rams. And, this is a team where we expected a lot more in week one, right? We wanted more Cooper Kupp. I was planting my flag on Allen Robinson for that showdown slate. And they really left a lot of egg on our faces. And I think it wasn't just us. It was probably the whole community, really. But let's talk about the Rams. They've got a kind of a sketchy matchup here against Atlanta. That's not a very good football team. Looks like Damian Williams isn't going to play or he'll be limited. So the backfield should be all Cordero Patterson for Atlanta. What do we like about the Rams outside of Darrell Henderson?
Yeah, and he's not priced at 9,900 like the one-off suggests. It's 5,700.
Golly, somebody would stop making these typos, Kyle.
And I know.
That'd be great.
I should catch them before I send them to you. I apologize. Yeah, so what I think Cooper Kupp's going to do his thing. I think you have like I don't know what the perception is on Allen Robinson, where we know he had a really bad game, but we know he played almost all the snaps, and we know he was open. And
Sure.
that Bills pass rush was getting after it. So when you go in Atlanta, you're in a dome. It's a real controlled environment. The pass rush isn't that great. They played a really good game against the Saints, but if you are able to, and Matthew Stafford at 6,300 because of a bad week one, I think that's about the lowest he's going to be all year. I know he can be really up and down, but I think he's going to have something to prove. And we saw that, I like Darrell Henderson because I think he's going to be really involved in the passing game, but they did shut down the running game against the Saints in week one. The Falcons did. But I like this Matthew Stafford, Allen Robinson, Kyle Pitts stack. All three of these guys majorly disappointed. And I know when I'm looking into my DraftKings lineup and I'm getting kind of towards the lower prices of certain tiers, I'm like, well, who had a good week one? And if you didn't have a good week one, in your mind, you kind of want to skip over those players. And so I think a lot of people are skipping over these players.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. I think a lot of people are skipping over these players because of their week one stats on, DraftKings, they're low, they're really bad. And I think they're going to be low prioritized for certain people. And I think this is where you can kind of get your edge on this kind of Stafford, Allen Robinson, Kyle Pitts stack. But at the same time, Higbee had a ton of targets. You want to try to get Kupp in your lineup. And Patterson, after an amazing week one, is only priced at 6,000. That is way underpriced.
Well, I'll tell you, I'm staying far away from the Rams this week, and I'm sure they're going to blow up. But it has nothing to do with their performance last week. It's that this Falcons team got a taste of almost getting a win last week, and I think they've got a little chip on their shoulder because they've been hearing all offseason how terrible they are and how they're going to be picking first in the draft and all that. This team feels a lot like last year's Lions to me. They're not particularly good on paper, but man, they are going out and playing every week like it's the freaking Super Bowl. And that should be terrifying for any team playing them because that means they can kind of sneak up on you and they can get some work done. Atlanta, you got Drake London's going to be coming back. He's playing this week, I believe. And then we've got, Kyle Pitts obviously is there. And Mariota's a competent quarterback. So this game could be closer than we probably want it to be. Mm-hmm. And, I'm not taking the Rams to cover. That's for sure. I think they win, but they're probably not going to cover. All the points you made about Robinson's always open. If he catches AJ Terrell this week, that could be pretty rough. Yeah. But Stafford, Kupp, that's always locked in, right? We know those guys are going to get theirs. Darrell Henderson looks like a decent play this week. All of that seems to line up. But, man, this game feels really herky-jerky to me. I think a lot of people are going to play Rams because they're the Rams. I'm probably not. Unless I'm running a bazillion lineups somewhere, I'm probably staying away from the Rams. But with that, let's hit the next one because we're kind of hitting some time here.
Yeah, I think this is our lot. Two more, and we're good.
Two more, you said? Okay.
Yep, this one and one more.
Fair enough. So this one here, we've got Baltimore Ravens. We know what the Ravens are, right? It's Lamar, it's Mark Andrews, it's Rashad Bateman. Full stop. That's the end of the line. It's really about the run it backs here. So take me down we already talked about the Dolphins, but you got Chase Edmonds as a run it back. We didn't talk about him when we talked about the Dolphins stack.
Yeah, he was heavily involved. He had more snaps, more rush attempts, more receptions than Raheem Mostert. They just, you play New England's defense, and, Bill Belichick can't figure out what to do on offense, but he sure knows how to get a defense motivated. So I'm going to give them props to that. So I think Chase Edmonds is still going to be heavily involved. I like the Lamar Jackson run here with Rashad Bateman. Devin Duvernay had a really good game, but it was on a long bomb, 2 long bomb touchdowns. Congrats to, for Lamar, just finally proving that, he can still do that. We've been kind of missing that from 2 years ago. Last year he was hurt a lot. Hollywood was out. We were like, how are you going to replace these targets? And he looked really good. So I like this mini stack here with Jackson Bateman, who caught his own long touchdown, and Tyreek Hill. I think this particular run it back, or this mini stack, has a lot of big boom or bust potential. So if you're looking for those, that boom potential, I think I like this one.
Cool. I can dig it. I don't really have anything to add to that outside of, we know the Ravens are banged up defensively, so I'm probably playing a lot of the Dolphins.
Yep.
But let's hit the next one. Hey, the New Orleans Saints. We already talked a little bit about them when we covered the Bucks. But J-Mo, Kamara, Michael Thomas. You got J-Mo, Michael Thomas, one-offs Kamara. There's no Jarvis Landry. Why do you hate my guy Jarvis Landry? What is it? What did he ever do to you?
I like Jarvis Landry. It's just the other situation we kind of talked about earlier about Jahan Dotson, where, you watch these guys, Jarvis Landry, and you're like, yeah, he could have another 8 reception game or whatever it was. But Michael Thomas still seems like the guy. I really like Chris Olave still. I think he's eventually going to get worked on in this offense. Now, if Alvin Kamara is out and is not playing, I'm swapping that in for Jarvis Landry. I think the mini stack with Jameis, Jarvis, and then even running it back with Julio instead of Mike Evans, you're going to save a ton on your average per player. You're able to get some of these bigger name running backs in. I like the other side of this game. I like the Buccaneers side a little bit more. I know there's a lot of injuries on this side, but I haven't fully committed to the Saints yet. They looked good week 1, but again, against the Falcons, who you say have a chip on their shoulder, but there's a reason for that because, they're projected to be one of the worst teams in the league. So I'm looking forward to this matchup. They always play well against the Buccaneers. They're at home, but I need to see it like one more week against a really good team before I start feeling confident in some of these pieces.
Well, I'll tell you, for the Saints, I'm not afraid to play J-Mo in a tournament, especially if it's like $3 entry or something. Give me J-Mo. I'm actually going to stack him. Michael Thomas at 5,800, and I'll stack him with Jarvis Landry too, because one of those guys is going to be open. If there's one thing we know about Jameis Winston is that he throws a very catchable ball, and that means somebody on one of the two teams is going to catch it. We may not know who. But Landry can catch it. Thomas can catch it, or a Buccaneer can catch it. Either way, somebody's catching a pass. I think that's the way I would go, just to shoot for the upside. I'd rather play ceilings than floors here. On the Tampa Bay side, just a weird thought here. Tyrann Mathieu can't cover anybody anymore.
No,
he's just not that guy. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson gone. They sent him packing off to Philadelphia. Zach Bond can't cover anybody. Demario Davis is about 1,000 years old, can't cover anybody. And then you've got Pete Werner on the weak side. He's a run and hit. He's not covering anybody anyway. Who's covering Cam Brate this week?
Well, I guess somebody can if he's even involved.
Nobody is the answer. I think I'm willing to take Cam Brate on a couple lineups as a run it back and just throw it out there as a flyer. I mean, he'd be a low-cost option at tight end. And this is a guy where nobody on that defense is, frankly, capable of covering really new. So with that being the case, I mean, I don't know what Cam Brate's price is. I actually have to go look it up. Cam Brate's 3,900.
Worth a flyer.
That's worth a flyer. So maybe something worth looking at.
Gerald Everett last week helped win people some money.
That's exactly it. Let's hit the next one here. Oh, this was our bets from last week. So let's talk about last week. Yeah, we struggled. Well, here's the thing. Your single play record was 5-4. And really, you just need to be over 500 when you're playing singles.
Correct. Yep. So yeah, it was started off good with the Bills. You had a little bit of backdoor covering here and there from the Lions scoring at the end of the game. Covering the Eagles -4.5. I like the Vikings money line. I had it in. I updated this as the odds changed, but we had the Vikings money line in when it was like they were like plus like 125.
Mhm.
So it was actually profitable money there. Chargers money line like that as well. And then Chiefs Cardinals, we won't have to talk about that. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, that was, a really dominant game. And then, of course, the Broncos -7 did not cover. But yeah, we have, going in here, one slide over for our bets for week 2.
Well, before we hit the week 2 bets, something I want to mention here is
Yeah.
that I think everybody lost on that 49ers game. I don't know, unless you were like a diehard on the Bears or you were hedging. I don't know anybody took the Bears to beat the Niners in week 1. And then that Chiefs Cardinals game, I think that was really split. I was in the camp of Chiefs one side of the fair against the Cardinals.
Yeah, there's a
But
lot of people that were, 50-50 on it.
yeah, absolutely. And that was a game where I know I've had many debates and conversations with my buddy Jordan about that one. So let's take a look at this week's picks and bets. And so what are a couple of your favorite ones here in terms of single play? Like, what do you want to get after and throw some money at?
Yeah, there's a couple of different ones that I'm looking at personally. I think the Bengals are going to just, smash their cover against the Cowboys, and the line's already moved to -7. And so these will be updated for tomorrow morning. I like that for Bengals over Cowboys. I like the Cardinals Raiders over on the 51.5. No one's gonna be able to cover there. The Raiders, the Chargers kind of were slow week 1, but they still scored 24 points. And the
Sure.
Cardinals let up 1,000,000 points or whatever it was. The Raiders can score 51 points by themselves if they want to.
Right.
So those are really 2 games that I do like. And then for the Vikings Eagles, I like the Vikings money line on the road against the Eagles. I know it's prime time and Kirk Cousins doesn't normally do well. I think we're going to see a different team this year from the Vikings, a different coaching staff. They looked really well. One thing I am pivoting from that will be updated for tomorrow is the Bears +10. I'm going to the Packers -10. I think they're going to cover it. Initially, I kind of liked what I was seeing enough from the Bears that I think they could potentially, not upset, but just kind of hang around. But I'm flipping over to that, and that'll be updated tonight.
Woo. All right. That's spicy. I like it.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I wanted. You can't always take the favorites. Sometimes people cover.
That's fair. Well, I think we can go ahead and stop sharing this screen here, so I'll take that off. So with that, we hope we gave you some good picks this week. Go ahead and get your lineups in. Remember, a couple key pieces of advice. Pick your spots, right? If you can't max enter a tournament that's got a limit, if it's a 20 entry max, make sure you can play all 20 entries without giving yourselves any kind of heartburn. Don't kill yourself trying to play the Millie Maker. The odds of hitting that and hitting all the players in a row to make the Millie Maker work the way you want is probably about the same as, getting struck by lightning while chewing bubble gum, on a street corner, it just doesn't happen that often. So pick your spots, find some good stacks, fill in with those premium guys in those high output games. You want games where points are being scored because that's how we get points, is in, points scored in fantasy. Touchdowns are scored, we get points. That's how it works. So with that, we got one more question that just popped in, and I'm going to pray like heck I'm not going to mispronounce this name. I'm probably going to butcher it, so I apologize in advance. This one's from Sai Gotham. Gotham? Got him? I probably butchered that, and I'm really sorry. My last name's awful, and everybody butchers it, so I understand the pain. My lineup: Derek Carr, Javonte Williams, Saquon Barkley, Jamar Chase, Greg Dortch, Jahan Dotson, Tyler Conklin, Devontae Adams as the flex, and the Bengals defense. This is my DK lineup. Please rate it. Thanks. Well, I'll tell you this. A lot of lineups, especially like that, look absolutely amazing going into the week. What I am going to do is I'm going to take the message down because I didn't read it in advance, and I don't want to be posting lineups up here that people could be copying and trying to put out there for you. We don't want anyone copying your stuff here. That's a killer lineup. I like it a lot. I love getting Barkley, Chase. I think Dortch keeping the prices down makes sense. Conklin's an interesting play. I really didn't have him in my player pool this week, but what do you think about Tyler Conklin?
Yeah, I think if I remember correctly, he scored like 11 and some change points week 1. The only problem I have with Conklin is they threw the ball 59 times. I don't know how reasonable
that's a problem.
That is. I don't know how. Yeah, like that. Like how not reasonable. How sustainable that is. But again, like their matchup this week. Like that. I guess they could throw the ball 60 more times again.
Welcome to the new NFL 2020.
Yeah, I know. I think the
2022.
game against Cleveland is going to be a little closer. If
Okay.
you were able to, if you wanted to spend up more on tight end, there's a lot of other running backs. I do like Barkley against
Love 'em.
Carolina.
I love a lot of these players. This whole lineup looks
I know
killer.
it
I
looks
love the
really
low
good.
cost options. Hey, you know what? Like I said, we're not going to mention all the players again because we don't want to get copied or anything like that. But that looks like a killer lineup. I'd enter it in a few different contests and see how it goes because you got to love having a handful of those premium dudes mixed in with some high upside, low cost guys. I think you got a great lineup there. Definitely run with it.
Yeah, and play some variations of that lineup. Put that lineup in. Swap some of those big names people out, and then try to up that tight end position, and then go back down, and then try to up that running back position. And that's the way we get the variation. If you like those players a lot, you want as many variations of those lineups as you can.
Bingo. That's really great advice there. So I think we're about wrapped. Is there anything else you want to share before we hop out of here?
No, I love that we always talk about going 30 to 40 minutes, and it's always an hour. That's my favorite
I know.
thing about it.
Well, that's why I like to say 45 minutes because I know I have no conception of time, so it's going to take us to an hour. But if I say an hour, it'll be 75 minutes. So
I told my wife 30 minutes last week, and it was an hour. And so this week I told her an hour to cover myself.
There you go. Good job. Well, then we're going to get you out of here just a shade early. So, guys, we wish you and gals, everybody, we wish you guys the best of luck this week playing DK, FanDuel, Thrive, wherever you're going to play your fantasy and DFS sports. Let us know in the comments if you liked, loved, hated anything we had to say. Be sure to subscribe to the channel and come see us next week, 9 p.m. Saturday for the slate. We wish you nothing but winnings and riches. With that, for Kyle Carroll, I am Jeff DiMatteo. Good night and good luck.